moves. They're simply called...
Actually, I pre-watched the video. I'll admit it. I pre-watched the video. I've seen it. I'm just pretending like I'm some sort of sage filled with wisdom here. Okay? But I pre-watched it. I'll admit it right now. Dude, we are neurally interlinked. It is crazy. Holy moly. This is Hades to Hades communication right here. For anybody that's a little bit active in the Hades scene, knows of a guy named Haelian. Haelian is this dude right here. And Haelian is incredibly talented at Hades. Incredibly talented, incredibly skilled. He's one of the best Hades players, I would say. Hades 1, I'm not sure how active he has been in Hades 2 yet. But I think he's been quite busy with Hades 2 as well. And he's probably gonna get some nice records in that game too. But yeah, he has thousands upon thousands of hours in these video games. And so he's one of the most interesting people to look at when it comes to giving a concise review on what Hades 2 is actually like. That being said, I have played my fair share of Hades as well. Both Hades 1 and Hades 2 by now, which a lot of my Hades 2 experience is documented. So you can look back at it. But he's come out with a video that are basically what I think, I haven't watched the video yet, but I think these are like his first impressions of Hades 2. And that's very interesting here. So I want to watch this video, and I want to go over this, and I want to see what he believes the problems are with Hades 2. I hope the audio is fine, we'll hear.
Hello, friends and lovers. My name is Haelian, and I am here to talk to you about what I think about Hades 2. Now, why...
Oh, let me pause the music.
Why should you care about what I think about Hades 2? Well, you probably shouldn't, but a lot of people do ask me a lot of questions about my opinions on the game.
Yeah, for the record, he has like over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, so the guy's big.
And how I feel like it stacks up versus the first game as a content creator for it. I've created almost 1,000 YouTube videos on the Hades franchise, and I played the entirety of the early access and for a very long time after 1.0 for Hades 1. So I definitely know the game.
I already gave you your acolytes, okay? We can skip the acolytes.
Hades 2 to start. So let's start with something a bit more broad. I think that Supergiant Games, the studio behind the Hades franchise, has managed to pull off creating a sequel that feels both familiar yet distinct. If you look around the different corners of the internet, you'll find that the critiques are split between calling the game too similar to the first or too different. Some say that the game played it too safe and brought back too many of the same features, while some will say they don't like the changes that have been made and wish it was even more like the first game. The fact that these two camps feel fairly equal is probably a good and healthy sign that Hades 2 actually managed to find a decent balance in this argument. I personally really appreciate the changes made to the basic formula, namely in terms of the sprint and the cast mechanics. If it were up to me, I'd probably prefer we saw even more changes, but it still feels like a relatively brand new game to me, aside from, like, you know, the boon systems kind of carrying over and
I wonder, wait. I wonder if he means, like, the cast attack, or if he means just casting magic.
Few other things. So about the sprint...
I will say...
Cast changes, and yes, I think they need to be talked about jointly.
Yeah, I
took some time for me to adjust to using the sprint over just panic dashing everywhere.
Okay, so before he gives his opinion, let me give you what I think. At least when it comes to this, I think magic is overall a tremendously good change for the game, and I much prefer having magic over not having it. That being said, I think magic is a lot more beneficial for casual players and a lot worse for hardcore players. Players who like to go on high heat. I think magic does not work the higher heat you go. But in a casual sense, the immense amount of new diverse options for builds magic gives you is phenomenal. And I think overall it's a good change. When it comes to the sprint, compared to double dashing in Hades 1, I think sprint is overall better. There's not a single thing do I prefer about double dashing over sprinting. Except that it's better to be able to double dash. I think double dashing is stronger. Is a stronger mechanic over sprinting, but sprinting is just so much more interesting. I much prefer having sprint. It makes the game more fun. And that's what matters the most, I think. I wonder what he's gonna say.
Where, like in Hades 1, you do need to
Hello,
use
Dan.
the cast in tandem with the dash and sprint in order to keep enemies at bay, since it ensnares and slows down enemies.
Okay, so he actually means the cast. Like, he means the circle button for me, I guess. But he means the circle. Damn, what do I think about the circle? Have I cared about the circle that much yet? I quite like it, but the only reason I like it is because there are enemies that revolve around it. Like, for most of the enemies, the circle doesn't really matter. But then there are enemies like this ball that he has on screen right now, or like the screeching ladies. And it feels like those enemies are designed just to remind you that you have that ability to stop them. And I like that, because it makes it a little bit more diverse. But maybe I resonate with what he said at the beginning about that. That it's... that they could have gotten further with that. Yeah, maybe my feelings about the cast aren't too strong, but yeah, for the enemies that it's built around, I like the feature.
I think this cooperative system really highlights how deep the combat could be in Hades 2, even while the game is still young. There was a lot of discussion around the pacing and speed of combat when Hades 2 first launched in early access, but it became clear after playing for a decent amount. A lot of that speculation came down to us all having a lack of meta progression and resources, which slowed down the pacing.
I already said this at the beginning. When it was like the first week of the game, I was like, people were complaining about how much weaker Millennium is, and I was like, no, that's not true. We're all gonna get used to this in due time. So what he says is completely right. People just needed to get used to it.
So let's talk about the meta progression. If you don't know, meta progression in a roguelike are the resources that carry over between runs and how you can make your character stronger with each attempt.
Hello, Dad.
I will say that I feel as though Hades 2 is a bit more challenging at first when compared to the first game, and it might take a bit longer to get enough meta progression from the Arcana card system and weapon aspects to feel stronger.
I don't think I agree.
But my god, the Arcana cards are just so much more interesting than the Mirror of Night.
Yes.
The system still leaves me wondering what the right choices are even now, and there was...
I super agree to this, bro. These Arcana cards are so cool, and I wish we had 2 of these fucking pages. I wish I had 2 of these pages, and I could just mix and match anything I want, bro. Because these Arcana cards are super duper interesting. This is almost as interesting to me as the fear mechanic is. And the fear mechanic is what makes the game fun for me. So I really like what he's saying here.
So much to experiment with. Chances are
I'm looking new
going
stream
to get
characters
even
today.
more cards in some form or another too, since we have only begun early access. I do think there are some balances, tweaks, and clarifications still needed, but the card system definitely feels a lot more interesting and involved already.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the most major addition we have seen so far in early access, the Surface. This has to be the biggest surprise of them all that I don't think anybody saw coming. We're going to have 2 paths to choose from when starting a run, each with their own distinct zones, enemies, and boss.
Yeah, so the surface right now is 2 regions, which I can't give it the full credit it deserves because we don't have the full credit yet. Like, we need content updates for the surface. But as it stands right now, I already prefer where the surface is going compared to the underworld. I think the surface is so much more interesting, man. The boat is really cool, where you have to choose paths constantly. And the first area that you have, where you can choose between like more than you can choose houses, so you have to make decisions, is also really, really cool to me. I really like the surface.
Bosses, essentially doubling the environments we got in Hades 1.
I don't like the
by
bosses
the time
in
the
the surface.
sequel launches in full access. Right now, we only have 2 biomes on the surface for early access.
Also, the ship biome is my favorite.
But the next major update is already supposed to add another. Most
I like that
likely
he calls
they
them
have 4
biomes.
planned just like for the Underworld. This is an interesting way to introduce more biomes to the formula, while most other games simply give you a choice of where to go in between each. but something tells me that the two paths are going to be critical to the story, which may be why they're separated.
Yeah,
While
for sure.
on the topic of story, as much as I love the more playful and quirky Zagreus from Hades 1, I do appreciate the change of mood that we've had for the sequel. Hades 2 feels like there is a lot more at stake story-wise. Mel's family has been kidnapped and we are out to rescue them, or else Kronos might eat them or something. I don't want to get too
At
far
least
into
that will.
it here because of spoilers, but we just have a lot of unanswered questions at the moment around the story, and I am super excited to solve some of these mysteries as the game progresses.
Really?
So that kind of covers this.
Wow, I super disagree with that. I think the story is so much worse in Hades 2. The story in Hades 2 feels so much more generic to me. Like, bad guy took over everything and I have to stop him, compared to Hades 1, where Hades 1's story was so good because it started out without any stakes, and by the end of the game, the stakes for the overall world that Zagreus lives in still wasn't too high, man. Like, Hades 1's story was super, what's the right word for this? Innocent, I guess, if that makes sense in a way. Like, Zagreus just wanted to get to the surface for the fuck of it, and then later on, we got into this family story, and because the story was not much more complicated than that, all these characters got so much time to breathe and be fleshed out, and it was beautiful. And I think that story is so nice, and it's so wholesome. And Zagreus is such a witty and fun character, because there is not that much at stake yet. And in Hades 2, it like, there's this constant need for we gotta save the world, that it sort of becomes generic. I don't know. I wish I was a better reviewer, man, so I could put my words out there. But I hope I'm making a little bit of sense here. First story season is always better than the following one. Shaking my head. No, that's not true. That's not true.
That have
but very often it is.
But Hades 2 has also brought back a signature style that I know we're all glad to see. The portraits, the environments, the music, the voice acting, everything is top-notch, as we'd expect from Supergiant. Sure, there are some placeholders here and there, but we know that.
I will say about the story, to add on, not to shit on it too much, I think with the story that Hades 2 has, Melinoë is amazingly, is like an amazing character. I really love Melinoë. I really, really do. I think she's like, I wouldn't say I like her as much as Zagreus yet, but she's getting there. And that's harder because this story I much less prefer, right? So that's really nice.
With that. It's actually kind of insane how much they've
Name one time it isn't true. Batman Begins had a worse story than The Dark Knight. Boom, there you go.
Stepped up the music personally. We have 3 different bangers we get to hear just for the first boss fight on the surface alone. So overall, Hades 2 is absolutely amazing.
Yes.
It brings something to us that feels familiar, yet distinct, and really delivers on being a sequel to one of the most acclaimed games in recent years.
Yes.
And that's not easy to do. However, it's certainly not perfect as is, I think. Let's talk about where I think it could be improved upon.
Okay, is there anything he didn't mention that I think deserves accolades? Is there anything I think is noteworthy that I think is really good at the moment? I don't know. I hope he goes into magic more. Let's keep it rolling first.
I should preface this part by saying that the game just launched into early access as of this recording only about a month ago, so a lot of things can and change. It's healthy to provide constructive feedback for a game like Hades 2, so don't feel like you have to love everything about it. I'm confident that Supergiant is listening and will take action where they deem necessary.
Hello Supergiant, if you're listening. He said he was confident, so we'll see.
So let's make sure we let them know where the game could be improved upon in our eyes. I'm just going to dive right into it since I think it might be the most
Oh my god, is he gonna complain about the moon in the first room? Because, oh, you're also live on Twitch? Yes, because we are gonna hard agree if he does.
glaring blemish currently in the game, and that is the Hex System. Hexes
Oh,
have
just all of
essentially
it?
replaced the call system from Hades 1, but you have to spend a certain amount of magic in order to use the hex. Each hex has a randomized skill tree you can upgrade if you get what they call Paths of Stars. The skill tree can increase damage, reduce magic requirements, and more. Now, hexes can be good, but I don't think they're in a place where they are actually good often enough. Too many just
Can be good, but I don't think they are in a place where they can be good often enough. I'm not sure if I agree.
feel bad, have harsh magic requirements, or need a lot of stars to get to a decent place. Hexes require a lot of investing, but the payoff is just not often there. But the worst...
Ooh. I do not agree to this. I do agree that the hex system needs a rework. Hold up, let me see if I can... So, the issue I have with the hex system... First of all, the hex should not appear in the first room. Like, room 1, no. Okay? It should never appear in the first room. I think to make up for that, I think a hex should always be a fourth buyable option in every single store. Like, there's gonna be maximum 8 stores in a run. Or 7. No, maximum of 7 stores in a run. I think every one of them should have a moon always buyable. And then to make up for that, you can give me less moon slots every time I upgrade or whatever. But the moon should always be available in a shop because you need to upgrade it like this. But what he says, I don't think is... I don't agree. I think if you fully invest into your moon, the last tier, like this tier over here, is always good. Like the power spike goes like this. This is the timeline of moons that you pick up. And then you have to pick up like 4 moons to get to the last one. And the first one is shit, so your power is like this. And then you get to the second, which is still shit, usually. Or if you're lucky and you chose the one with 5 upgrades, you can get there immediately. But let's say you don't. And then the third is like, it's a minor upgrade. So you're like here. And then once you get the final moon, boom! The value skyrockets. This upgrade is always really insane. Because once you get to this, like let's say you take the nuke. And you get to Chronos by the time you have the nuke, right? You can nuke him like 4 times in one run. And the nuke, you don't need to do anything for it. It's just like a free 4,500 damage or something. Which is just insane. Especially because you can do it. And it doesn't just hit Chronos. It also kills like all of his little allies. And also, you can do it when he's doing like his one-shot ability and you can't reach him. You can just put the nuke on him and still deal damage. The same goes for the laser. The healing is also incredible once you get into the final upgrade, when you can constantly heal yourself. Some of these upgrades are really, really good. And I think if you don't think all of the upgrades are good, then it's those upgrades that are not good that should get buffed. But I don't think the issue is that the inevitable value is bad. I think the inevitable value is good. It's getting there that's the issue with the hex system. It needs to be either more gradual, or I need to be offered more chances to upgrade it. And it also shouldn't appear in the first room. Because the first room is too important.
part is being forced to start a run by getting a hex in the very first chamber.
Okay. I should have let it speak for 5 seconds longer.
What you get in that first chamber is so important, and that hex is just going to be near useless for probably the next 10 to 15 encounters until you get a build going that uses and regenerates magic. I like the idea behind...
You don't need a build that regenerates magic, because magic can be regenerated with an Arcana card, and it's really, really fucking good. The Arcana card is super underrated, I think. Although it is nice to get some magic flow.
Hexes, but I think they need a little bit of restructuring. They don't currently feel worth investing in most of the time, since you're always trading something else for the hex upgrades. In a sense, I wonder if runs are simply not...
I'm not sure I agree with that, man. There are a lot of runs in which I chose a moon over something else. Like, not every run. And there are definitely runs in which the boon is useless to me. Maybe even more so than when it's useful. But I don't think it needs to be useful every run. Like, there are runs in which the boons have been useful to me. And I think that's... I wouldn't say the boons are in a good spot, right? Like, I just went over the things I think they could improve on. But I think their value is a little underrated.
Not long enough to provide enough upgrades to give you a meaningful collection of boons, palms, health, and hex upgrades on top of other things.
Yeah.
While hexes have essentially replaced call boons, we also have magic regeneration boons that we have to manage as well, so it's not a one-to-one replacement.
That's true.
Maybe hexes would be best served as a guarantee, perhaps by offering them after the first boss each run and providing passive stars after each subsequent boss.
A guarantee after the boss and providing subsequent stars after each subsequent boss. I feel like that would make it so overpowered. Imagine if I get a full moon every run for free. I don't think that could work, man. I think the option... I think you would have to change more about the moons. I think the... I like that he comes with an option, though. I wonder what he would think about my shop idea. To always have a 4th slot available for it. I don't know, the moons are interesting. We'll see what they do with it.
I do think hexes are getting close, and they are clearly working on them as we speak, so I'm expecting that Supergiant will come up with a reasonable solution soon.
Yeah, we already had some
hex
hex changes.
Seems small, but I think it's a bigger deal than we realize, and that is the UIs in system presentations. For instance,
the UI and system presentation. What do I think of this? I think it's not ideal. I think the worst offender of this shit is the weapon aspects, man. That menu is so fucked, bro. When you have to change your aspects and upgrade them and they're all in this goofy list one after another. That shit is... I don't know about it being too much of a problem though.
Since
but
the Oath of the...
I feel like this was all early access stuff anyway. I was kind of expecting that would like all change, to be honest.
Unseen is the new Pact of Punishment, but is far less readable at a glance. It's really difficult to gauge how many levels of a particular vow I have on, and if you haven't memorized the icons, trying to read the screen is a nightmare without fiddling with things. I sort of have a pet... Oh,
also another offender of this is the distinction between attack, special, omega attack, cast, omega cast, and all that nonsense. Like... Sometimes you just don't even know whether attacks mean all attacks or just attack, or I don't know. That kind of stuff is weird too. The wording is weird sometimes.
Specific item in order to understand what it does, and when there are so many items displayed at once, it makes it very hard to read unless you're already very, very knowledgeable. The Arcana system has this issue as well, but at least it's more obvious when they're on or off, I guess. I also picked up...
I don't think the Arcana system has that issue.
Weapon upgrade system feels...
I wouldn't mind if the Arcana UI stays the same for the rest of the time. I think it's fine.
Unnatural and clunky.
Yes,
thank you. These menus just feels a bit messy and doesn't flow right. Maybe it was best leaving the upgrades with the respective weapon screens like in Hades 1. Speaking of readability, there are still a lot of kinks when it comes to wording and descriptions that could use improvement. For instance, the Strength Arcana card says you get plus 50% damage from it, but it's not actually all damage, it's just some. There's also the distinction between Omegas and I guess what I'll call regular moves. I say I guess because there isn't a specific term for non-Omega moves. They're simply called...
Actually, I pre-watched the video. I'll admit it, I pre-watched the video, I've seen it, I'm just pretending like I'm some sort of sage filled with wisdom here, okay? But I pre-watched it, I'll admit it right now. Dude, we are neurally interlinked. It is crazy. Holy moly. This is Hades to Hades communication right here.
Called attack, special, or cast. And descriptions rely on you deciphering the differences between all of them. In fact, in the current build, there are multiple instances where the game mentions one, but actually means another, or it just doesn't really mention anything at all.
It's almost verbatim.
So we have to guess. I'm looking at you, Daybreaker. There are many more examples where something does not quite perform as the description implies, and we don't know if the description is wrong or if the behavior is unintended. Yes.
It's gotta be the
Now, I'm
description
not
for
going
that
to moan
specific case.
too much about balance in the game, since there is still tons of time for Supergiant to work on that stuff, but I feel like the one thing I have to mention is duo boons.
Yeah, duo boons are shit. I was gonna think he was gonna mention that Kronos is like way too big of a boss spike.
I feel that many are just not what you'd hope or are extremely niche. I believe that getting a duo boon should pretty much always feel good, and there should always be at least one that players are seeking for every build. But I don't think that's the...
I agree with the first point, don't agree with the second point. I don't think you should always be seeking for a duo boon in every build. I don't think a duo boon needs to fit in every single build. Especially not in Hades 2, where there are so much more builds compared to Hades 1. Because of magic. But I definitely agree with the first point.
Case for most in Hades 2 currently, and I find myself just ignoring them most of the time as is, instead of planning runs around them like I did so often in Hades 1. Now, not everything in the game should be overpowered, but I do think it's wise to give players the ability to become overpowered and reward them for planning and strategizing around getting a difficult upgrade.
Yeah, it's hard to be super overpowered in this game, even when you strategize. Unless you get something that's like unintentionally already overpowered, like how the Moment Staff was. We also sort of have legendary boons for this though. But I sort of get what he's getting at. And they also made getting duo boons harder, I believe, in the last balance patch. I don't know, maybe he's right on this, maybe I just haven't thought about this.
Such as the duo boons. So, here's hoping we get some changes. Okay, one last point I have, which is about the Eris mechanic. In case you don't know, if you reach Oceanus on any of your first 3 or 4 runs on a new save file, Eris will show up and give you a debuff that makes you take more damage from then on. She will then appear in Morning Fields for a few runs after that.
Yeah, this was annoying, but
in Tartarus until run number 11 or so, at which point she never returns to the underworld. As much as I enjoy the Easter egg, this kind of additional difficulty being thrown at me felt bad in an artificial way. I'm glad I wasn't able...
I agree with that. There was a lot of controversy about this mechanic because people were saying that Hades 2 is worse because this mechanic is in the game because I didn't need to be held back in Hades 1. But the problem is you've played Hades 1. So you're a lot better of a player now. So you will progress this game too fast. Which is why she's in there in the first place, right? But at the end of the day, this mechanic, while it was annoying, I don't care for this problem.
Able to beat the game on my first try, but I guess I was hoping it would
20% more damage means nothing when you just don't get hit easy peasy. You are so right, actually.
Feel more natural. This is a tough one because no doubt if I didn't have so much experience playing Hades 1, I probably wouldn't have ever seen Eris. Nevertheless, I think she may serve better as an optional challenge rather than a forced one, so just allow us to choose whether to take her debuff or not. I think that's it for the pain points I wanted to talk about, but I want to reiterate that most of these points will almost certainly be altered in some way eventually throughout early access, and what I've said does not mean that the game isn't worth playing as is. I'm really excited to see how things get reshaped as time goes on, so enough complaining. So now that you've heard the things that I wanted to talk about, I figured now is a good time.
I honestly wish he took more time talking about what's good about the game. Because that was pretty brief, I think. Like we didn't talk about some nice things, you know? Like I wish he talked a little bit about max mana upgrades and how that, like he talked about how a moon can take up another choice, right? But so can max mana in a way. Like, max mana is also just a new addition, while we have almost the same amount of encounters as in Hades 1. Like, mana doesn't get enough attention in the video. Same with aspects. Like, a big issue that I had was that I think aspects are a lot lamer in this game than they are in the first. Where in Hades 1, I felt like each aspect completely changed how I felt about the weapon. But in this game, the aspects are too similar to what the aspect of Malinaway is. For a lot of the weapons, I think. Like I remember being really disappointed when I first saw the aspect. Now we still need to get aspects, I believe. So there's still more to come. But yeah, the aspects were really disappointing to me. I wish he talked about that a little bit.
Time to answer some of the more frequently asked questions I get based around my opinions on the game of Hades 2. So let's check them out. All right, number 1, is Hades 2 harder than Hades 1?
Is Hades 2 harder than the Hades 1? Depends on if you've played Hades 1. If you have never played Hades 1 and you boot up Hades 2 now, is it harder? I'm leaning towards no. And I'm leaning towards no because Hades is a lot more melee centered. And I feel like it is easier to get used to a ranged centered game because you have slightly more time to react to stuff. But then you have a lot more tools in Hades 2. So there's a lot more to get used to. I don't know, it's hard to tell, man. I don't think it matters too much. I think the difference is deceivingly small between how hard the two games are.
Kinda, I think. I feel like it took me a little bit longer to get what I call cruising speed, I guess, in Hades 2, you know? Where you kind of get enough meta progression, become familiar with the game, where you just kind of start cruising through it, at least at the baseline difficulty, and you don't have to work super hard to get every single win. I felt like it took more meta progression to kind of get to that point. But otherwise, it feels fairly even. You know, I do think Chronos is quite a bit more difficult than Hades. In the
I pre-watched.
But that could change. But I think overall, once you get to that cruising speed, they're fairly equal. What do you think about Infusion?
Actually, it's freaking me out at this point.
Infusion Boons. Okay, so Infusion Boons are fairly equal. What do you think about Infusion Boons?
I like them. I think Infusion is a really cool mechanic. I wish they did more with it, to be honest. I really like that there's certain rooms in the surface where you can get an extra infusion thingy. I think Infusion is great, to be honest. I just wish they did a little bit more with it.
Okay, so Infusion Boons are those kind of special boons where each god has a specific one, and you get a bonus, or I guess you just get a boon effect, based on the different elements you're going to hold. I think it's a great idea. It's not something I really saw coming. And theoretically, it'll make us think a lot harder about the boons we choose. We have to look at our elements and just think about the different possibilities.
If he follows this up with, but I think they could have done more of it, I will, I don't know what I will do. Hello, Jeeves, hello!
Around the infusions, what gods we have, etc., etc. It does feel a little thin at the moment. I think we need more ways to sort of interact with those
I don't know what to tell you.
elements, either to gain them or to lose them or to change them out, you know. I think we just need more stuff to kind of work with it, make it a little more interactive and not as flat. And something tells me they have something in the works for it. What do you think?
Oh, he knows. Oh, I saw that face. He knows, bro. He's in it behind the scenes. That face tells me infusions are gonna be more so in the later days.
Okay, another great idea that I just 100%. What do you think about the Chaos Trials? Okay, another great idea that I just 100% did not see come.
The Chaos Trials. You know what they should do with the Chaos Trials? They should make them community things, man. Do you know how in like what's a game for this? Bloons Tower Defense. You can make a community map where you only limit the amount of monkeys you can place on the battlefield, and they can decide in which area you have to do it. I wish there was a way to interact with the community in the sense that I can make a Chaos Trial. Like I can say, okay, you're gonna go to Erebus, you're gonna take this aspect, and you're gonna have these available gods, and you're gonna need to clear it in this time, or something. Like I can make my own challenge, and I can upload it to some sort of community board, and then I can download other people's challenges. Wouldn't that be a sick feature for the Chaos Trials? Wouldn't that be sick? Like that could be really fun. So far, I think the Chaos Trials, you do them like once and then you never care about them again.
Coming from them, right? If you don't know the Chaos Trials, they're sort of like these little mini runs where you usually do one zone with a very specific loadout. And while I wasn't super impressed the first like 2 I did, once I actually got into like the meat of them, you kind of had these crazy, wacky loadouts where you got like a bunch of hammers, a bunch of boons, and you kind of got to experiment with these interesting things. And it gave me a lot of inspiration to go and kind of replicate those builds or
I didn't
try
really
to
have
do them
that.
in my own way in a real run outside of the trial, you know? It kind of feels like a good replacement for just watching, you know, some crappy YouTuber upload runs of him playing the app. What about co-op?
That's me.
Wait,
what?
Upload runs of him playing the app. What about co-op?
I don't
I
think
mean,
we
I
need
get
gold.
asked this one a lot. I guess my opinion on co-op is, I mean, I think it does fit in the game. I think co-op could fit in the
Does
game
it?
with Hades, too, at least here. Is this something that I really desire? Not so much. There's not really a lot
Pre-watched.
in it for me to have co-op in the game, and I guess if it's left up to me, I would rather see them spend
Co-op?
that
Yeah,
development
playing with other
time
people.
on more features or content or quality or something else altogether, just because I don't think I'm going to make good use of co-op. But if they add it in, I'll
Me
find a way
neither.
to
I don't
play
have
it and
friends.
we'll have some fun. Okay, what's your favorite insert thing here, basically?
Okay.
Well, I like the aspect of pan for the daggers a lot. I guess that...
Okay, favorite aspect is the aspect. First of all, the skull is the best weapon they have in the game. For my favorite, it's my favorite weapon in the game. That's how I should say it. By far, by the way, it doesn't even come close. Doesn't even come close. The skull is so far above the rest of me. And then my favorite aspect for the skull is the one where you like load up all your skulls inside a shotgun and then you special towards them. That one is the most fun. That's the most fun way to play the game for me.
That could be called my favorite aspect or weapon, I suppose. It's really hard to pick one of those right now while I'm still experimenting. For characters, oh boy.
Characters, Aphrodite because she's naked.
I mean, I think Dora has a lot of great lines. Eris is really funny to talk to. She's like the love, the hate character, kind of like the Theseus of Hades too.
True.
Keepsakes, gosh.
Keepsakes? Artemis is really fun. Artemis is keepsake, the one that gives you crit chance when you're low on health. That one is really fun for speedruns. Favorite keepsake beside that? I like the Chaos one, but I think the Chaos one has an unintended effect so far, where you get to keep the hammer. The Chaos buff. I like the one where you have some advantage against Guardians, where they like you take a chunk from their health. That one is pretty cool. What else is there? I don't know. I think my favorite one is Artemis.
I mean, I don't know if I feel an attachment to keepsakes. White Antler is kind of fun just to be like that glass cannon style.
That's Artemis's.
Build, and yeah, I mean, outside of that, let's see. Oh, music. Oh man, I'm gonna claw out your eyes and drown you to death. Come on, you gotta love that one. What do I want to see added to the game? Oh.
Well, first of all, the fucking surface would be nice. But aside from stuff we already know what's getting added, what would I like to get added? I would like to see a lot of aspect changes. I think that's my biggest gripe, man. I wish the aspects were more interesting. More diverse. I wish I could care more about all the aspects. And every single aspect could make me think about the game in a different way. Because I really feel like that's how it was in Hades 1. And it just doesn't feel that way. More aspects would be nice. Just more. Maybe that's what I would like to get added.
Boy, I think the more I've thought about this question, the more I've come to the realization that more than anything, I just kind of want to get surprised, you know? So I almost don't want to say too many things out loud.
That's a good answer, but it's also kind of a politically correct one, okay? You can't cheese yourself out of this question. Come on now. What's your favorite new thing that you want to get added? Answer me, Haelian. Answer me.
Because I just really cherish those moments where they introduce a new mechanic or system or whatever to the game, and it's just a total shock. And it's honestly the best memories I have for playing almost any game is just being totally surprised by it. But I guess if I were to ask for one very specific thing, there's always like the kind of speedrun or just custom mode in the game would be absolutely amazing.
Okay, fuck, you did answer me. Haelian, I would like to formally apologize for being so rude to you. You did actually answer the question. I'm sorry.
For speedrunners, challenge runners, or just players wanting to experiment and create their own custom little challenges. There's definitely like a lot of possibilities there. And I think it would actually
He's kind of talking about the Gales thing I was talking about.
If we could
the Gales trials.
Have this more custom mode in the game where we get to choose the rules, the layout, the loadout, and a few other features for us. You know, I think that could actually really help build up the community. Did you know that the frog can block the sheep hex?
Yes.
No way. All right, and that's it. Hey, thank you so much for watching.
Alright, cool video. Very cool video. I wish you talked a little bit more about the good stuff. I wish we got to discuss some more. Like, it's only 17 minutes, bro. I want the next video to be 2 hours. So I can dissect everything and my video can be 7 hours. How about that, okay? But you can do it when the video gets, when the full game launches, that's fine. So you have time to prepare. Also, what the fuck's this in the background? Really curious about that. But, good video. I feel like, for the most part, we super agreed with each other. There were some things that were a little bit different, I think. But, yeah, I mean, again, I wish we heard a little bit more about what's good. But, I mean, for the most part, we agree, which is good. And that means that, especially because I think he has ties behind the scenes, that means that Supergiant is probably on a really good path. So, good stuff. Very good stuff. I'm going to refill my water bottle. Agreed with each other because you pre-watched? You know it. Correct. Be right back.